Welcome to the DevReady Podcast, where we're helping non-techs build better tech. Today, on our 150th episode, I'm here with Anthony, the CTO of Aerion and my co-founder, effectively. Today, we want to share a little bit about what we're doing in the world of DevReady, what it actually means, where it all started from, and a little bit about what we're doing in the world of AI. Anthony, thanks for joining us.
Not a problem.
So, Anth, I wanted to share with the audience a little bit about who we are, because I know we share it through podcasts, and it's a little bit about what we've done in the past. So, who Aerion is, we're basically the guys behind DevReady. We founded Aerion in 2008, a little while back now, mate. We started with 5 of us, and then over the journey, it's the 2 of us that are really running the business, but also brought in some really good people that are really a part of this space. Without them, we wouldn't be where we are today. Shout out to some of the core team, Anil, Aaron, and Bacasses of the world. Newton, who sits over in Nepal running our offshore environment, and CTO over there. Anita, who drives a lot of our marketing, and the list goes on. So some cool people in the business. So thank you to everyone that's part of this journey today. We started straight out of uni. Anthony can share a bit about what he was doing at Coles, really.
I was still in uni.
You're still at Coles?
I was still in uni. I was final year doing my honours, writing a thesis on open source handheld game consoles possible. This is just before Raspberry Pis and all those sort of things came out. I was tutoring, working at Coles, and doing this, and final year of uni.
Yes, it was a weird time, wasn't it?
So that's how we started. We just thought, all right, it's another person just approached me and said, "Do you want to join this idea that we've got?" I'm like, "Yeah, all right. Might as well try it now. We've got nothing to lose. I'm still living at home." And then that's really what said, "All right, let's jump forward."
And the other person that we won't name him, but he effectively brought the team together. So it wasn't us that really founded Aerion. It was another person in the team that really started the journey with us. He was only with us for a short time. It didn't really work out collectively as a team. And then there was 3 of us that really ran from that group at the beginning. So yeah, it in business, you never know how it's going to roll out. So we were a startup. Guys out of uni had really no idea what we were doing. That's the reality. And we sort of started Aerion, really.
A couple of PHP classes and programming classes behind us, and that was enough to get started.
So the first sort of stuff we did was really educational games, and we were driving to a games company. Our goal was, let's be a games company. And that sort of shifted over time. I suppose the opportunities led into more business tools and applications. But we started off with VSEC, and our first client was VSEC, Latrobe. They probably came on the same boat. I think it was actually Latrobe.
Latrobe Uni was the first one. The e-mentoring for girls was the first project we did while we were at uni. And then VSEC rebuilding
It was the original Mission to Mars, yeah.
Mission to Mars, the original one, was the first one we did. And that came through because I had done a summer internship with VSEC as well at the end of that year of uni.
Yeah, so it was the first year was fun. We made no money. We were supported by the New Start allowance, I believe I was. You were supporting yourself by some Coles on the side as well. So starting a business was a challenge at that point, but it was good learning, good fun, and we were learning lots of things. Let's park it and move it forward about 6-7 years to where DevReady started. DevReady started off the back of us learning that, okay, we can build product, we're getting good technically, but can we really deliver outcomes for customers? And that's where it all started, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was working on a project for over a year, delivering it, them trying to roll it out, and then their stakeholders saying, no, we don't want this thing. A very technical sound product that was doing what it's supposed to do, offline syncing through USB devices to computers in remote locations and downloading data and all that sort of stuff, but people didn't want it, didn't understand it, and we had thought we had asked the right questions, but we didn't, clearly. And that probably stems from a problem a lot of software companies have, which is, so to speak to someone, do a quote in a couple hours, and then go ahead with a project, and not spending enough time to go and do it.
Yeah, jump right in, right? So yeah, we learnt that. And that's probably at the point where we started to deviate on roles a little bit in the business. So it might have been earlier. I think I was doing more sales early stage. Yeah, we learnt that we couldn't do the same thing and be involved in the same thing. Anthony took on the CTO role. I took on the reluctant CEO role. I didn't put that title to my name for a long time. Yeah, that was so that was fascinating. But where we sort of shifted that you need different hats and people to focus on different things in business.
Yeah. I think it came from either we were both missing tasks because we thought the other person was going to do it, or we were doing the same task twice.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of overlap. Yeah.
So we had to stop that and then split. So then we just know, all right, you're going to do your bit, I'll do my bit, and as long as we do each other's bits properly, then we don't have a problem.
But we're always still learning it today, right? So, but back to DevReady for a minute. So that started off a failed project in my mind, and at the time it wasn't a failed project, but I went to Anthony and said, "Mate, we've got to be doing better." And then DevReady was really born over the next space of probably a few years, where we started to flavour out what it might be.
I think when I've done searches in the past, the first time we used the term DevReady was 2015. So it's been 9 years now.
Then. Okay.
Yeah, so at least I can find it in Dropbox.
Yeah, so
and that was really solving two problems. It's how do we get the right thing built for the clients, asking the right questions and putting enough time in it to quote it properly. So then either we don't go in too far and then we're in over our heads and not getting paid for all the hours, or the client's not getting what they're actually after. So I think that's probably the big problem for a lot of software companies is you wish you could get paid to quote people.
Yeah.
So you can actually spend the time to do it properly and give them what's needed.
Yeah, so we started to think about ourselves more in the line of what does a building company do, right? So you got an architect up front that plans a project and designs it if you're doing custom builds. We're in the world of custom builds, so we need to architect things. We need to think about it, do it right. And should we be building this thing? You might find a block of land out there that's full of rock and not possible to actually get the rock out, or it's going to cost you $500,000 to blow up the rock and it's not feasible anymore.
Yeah.
Same thing in this space.
Being a building company lately is not very feasible either.
No, let's not talk about that. Really.
In hindsight, that might not be the best analogy to use, saying you were following the building industry, but it's working for us, and we've got a great success rate of projects that go through. Some that we've even told, don't go ahead because there's no ROI. You're going to spend too much money on features that return little to no value.
And that's the point. You need a business case, right? So reality is technology serves a business in the end, or it serves users, or it serves something else. It's just a means to an end. It's a way we get a solution out there. It's not...
Well, as we say, it's a tool. You can do the same thing using Excel. It'll just take you a shitload longer and 10 different Excel files probably to get as organized and be able to do it properly. So it's really, you have a process that has to get done. What's the best way to do it? And a lot of cases, it's a tool that is customized to your use case, your workflow, and your business to make your business run.
So, Anthony, you drive a lot of DevReady today. What's some of the parts that you do? Yep. So we do early stage stuff where we're visioning the product because we need to understand where the roadmap could be. So when you're designing a product, you've got to think about, okay, not just for today, or what's the vision of the product? So we're architecting towards that, or we know that we're building a product for today that we're going to scrap because we're not going to be able to deliver on the vision. After that, you go through quite a regimented process. Tell the guys what it's all about.
Yeah. So there's, like you said, there's two options there. It's build something temporary, because then the client is either doing something as a prototype or experiment, or it's a short-term livable thing. So it's not a long-term product like a promotion or something to do with a competition or an event. The longer-term platforms, we'll go back to the building analogy. Are you looking for a double, triple, or single-story house? If you're on a triple-story house, we're not going to lay the foundations for a single story because it won't let you grow. And then to go back and renovate and add that third story is going to be more expensive than if you planned it from the start. That's really understanding what you're after, knowing your vision, knowing where you are in funding and budgets and what you can actually get to as well is important. From there, it then becomes diving into each of the modules and features that we would start planning from those discussions and understanding what the system looks like. Once we have that rough idea, we put together a brief, and that really sets the page for the DevReady moving forward. So the brief outlines, all right, this is our understanding of the product, where we think it can go, and how it would be used. And as a client, you check that and validate, and then that sets a strong basis for a discussion to move forward. So we're all aligned on the same page. We're not talking from two different books and designing a product, but talking two different languages almost and not understanding what each other's asking for.
And a key part of that is validating that your stakeholders are really going to buy into this. So once you've got some wireframes, some key features, functions, we're having those conversations, we're testing, we're ensuring that the end users are going to be using this, we're getting feedback along the way. You might need to build something to get feedback. You could show Figma wireframes, which is a framework we use quite a bit to build wireframes, but you want to be testing. So when we're building products, we need to make sure we're getting feedback along the journey so we're going down the right path.
Yeah, and then once we get on that right path, so after we've sat down, presented the brief, you've taken time to absorb it and put it through, we then go through a few different things. There's a lot of research on Google, which is, all right, what's this industry? What do they do? How does it work? What tools are out there? What can we take from existing tools that may have similar features? Because large companies have spent a lot more money on one specific feature than you're probably going to spend on your entire product, considering Google, Microsoft, Apple, things like that. That then helps us start outlining what core features, modules, functions are necessary for your product. So we start documenting all of those, giving them a description and an understanding of why, putting a story behind each one. And then there's discussions with the clients to understand, all right, what's the actual business processes or logic or rules that those features have to follow. So for example, if you're building a SaaS subscription product, you'll have specific rules and logic around what happens on a missed payment. How soon after a missed payment do you want to notify someone? Do you want to retry? Do you want to disable their account? Do you want to delete their data? So just there are 4 questions there that I've just rattled off the top of my head that you wouldn't have thought of yet, but we need to be clear on that. And that's why we go through this process of discussions and workshops. We create and document, give them back to you for review. So we can get clear on these things that actually make a big difference to your system. Because a small decision now can lead to a huge pivot that is easy to correct in this documentation stage. Once you've built the house, it's hard to then put the bathroom where the bedroom is if the pipes aren't in the right spot, for an analogy.
Yeah, that gets into Agile, right? So we're very Agile in design because that's when we can throw stuff out, throw in the bin, retest, reflavor, change the architecture, change the UIs. But when you get into building, you need a plan. In terms of Agile, just working on a 2x sprint without no roadmap or plan in place or structure towards your working towards, you need a goalpost. If you don't have a goalpost, then you're not really going to achieve anything. You might loop around, build something, and you're 6 months down the track, and you have to throw it in the bin because you haven't thought about these things. So the whole adage of Agile is, in our mind, be Agile in planning, be Agile in design, do as much as that as you possibly can, and shrink it down to an MVP. Stats are, the smaller your products, the more chance of success. So if you've got a big, grandiose plan that's going to take 5 years to deliver, your chance of success is anywhere around that 10% mark in reality, and that's on time, on budget, right product. If you go small and you do a 3-4 month little sprint, 2-month little sprint, however small you can make it, you've got a 60% chance of succeeding in that little sprint. It's a much better outcome for everyone.
And that doesn't only relate to software, happens to, you see it everywhere, it's construction projects, mega projects. They're always years behind, billions over budget. Recent example, if you think of that NEOM, the line that they're building in Saudi Arabia. So I think it was 24 kilometers or something longer.
One
stretch of
kilometer
new city
wide,
that's meant to be like just a line. But they've cut it down to only 2 kilometers is what they can be building by 2030. I have the whole thing ready. So they're already 6, 10, 15 years behind, and they've barely started the project. The bigger it is, the harder it is to estimate. And there's studies out there that account for this. There's a good episode of something that talks about that on the Cautionary Tales podcast that talks about the overages and on the size of projects and scopes. But in saying that, with Agile projects, just to touch on, I think it's a 268% increase in failure in Agile projects, is what I read in a recent study last week or the week before. So if you're running on Agile without a plan, you know, it's 2.68 times more likely to fail.
It's massive, isn't it? But I think we can learn from both models. So there's the waterfall traditional model, and then there's the Agile model. The advantages of Agile are you've got daily check-ins, you've got scrum meetings, you've got these fortnightly plans, you've got little goalposts. But then the waterfall benefits are you've got a structure that you're working within, rather than just off the cuff. Let's throw something at some developers. Let's try and build something in 2x. Yep, we delivered something, and then let's pivot again. Working in a managed Agile approach can deliver some good outcomes if you're building MVPs in particular.
Yeah, so a really good way that we support being able to pivot and have that Agile approach is we don't just send pages or reams of pages of documentation to the clients to review modules. We create wireframes in Figma, our preferred tool of choice at the moment. I probably spend a couple of hours in that a day, to then really map out what the screens look like based on all the knowledge that we've captured for each of those modules. And then we don't just give you the documentation. We'll take you through the demos of the wireframes and prototypes and make sure that this is functioning how you envisioned it. Because what you read in the page doesn't necessarily line up to what happens in the visual, but it's our job to make sure that what we've put on the page matches up to those rules and visuals so we can capture the requirements from.
Yeah. The picture tells us 1,000 words, right? So, yeah. It's the pictures, the visuals of what people need. They want to see it, touch something. It doesn't have to be the final product. It can be a Figma.
The click-through prototypes really do help as well. I'll show the flow through the whole application, not just screen by screen. So it really identifies, all right, click a button, pop-up will come up, click that, takes you to the next screen and really shows you how things will work and really solidifies what the clients are thinking versus what we're designing. And I find that helps across the team as well. So I don't just give you pages of documentation to look at. It's look at the wireframes, are they okay? And then we have a process that just reviews the screens and all the documentation together.
So that's quite a bit about DevReady and what we've been doing over the past, 10 years, give or take? 9, 10 years? Yeah, so it's been a little while.
Almost now.
Before, we used to spend a couple of hours in a room, as most developers do, and then put a pitch together. All right, this is what we're going to build. And then we find that most of the time the project's got to change anyway. So either you're investing up front to plan, or you're effectively going to be investing during the project to plan and pivot, and it's more cost effective to change code than it is to change a Figma diagram and a bit of documentation.
Yeah, 100%. And then really DevReady started as, we used to use the term living document. There was a Google Doc that would run and it would just turn into a slow, sluggish piece of shit by the end of a DevReady because there's so much content in the one document and screenshots and all this stuff. And then it evolved into, all right, we'll do it all in Confluence. So then it ties closer to the development where the developers live, connected to the Jiras where they can work. That turned into a slow piece of crap for us as well. There was just so many links and so much content we were creating. And then I think we had been toying with the idea of, all right, we need to build an AI version of DevReady. But we started these discussions in 2018.
We did. We were looking at how we're going to...
We were looking at it very early.
Suck data off... I think one of the early concepts we had was, let's go and look at products that are out there, suck their user guides and facts off and see if we can build an AI version, help us plan stuff.
Yeah. And then they were models and doing full proper data science, which we didn't have the skill set on the team to do. And I didn't want to go and become a temporary data scientist.
Mostly tech development
to get to that point. And then it was really just, all right, that's something we have to do. I think I've attempted to build a DevReady platform 4 or 5 different times over those 10 years. Starting out from like, all right, this is a tool where we do the estimates on, and then it goes down to task level and just variations of that. And then as I learn things, I'll try and recreate it because that one was no good or something better. And then really we're getting into, all right, this AI thing's coming out that we're seeing. I still remember telling everyone about, there's these things happening where the AI can write content for you. And it's written a research paper about 2 scientists going into some unknown valley in Peru and finding unicorns. And it was written like a full proper white paper, and they turned that service off. I don't think any of us realized how big of a moment that was going to be. And I didn't realize either. And I was telling everyone about this, but I didn't realize what that will turn into. And that would have been 2018, end of 2018, early 2019.
About that time, I remember seeing this article. You sharing it, and then, oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and I was telling it to everyone. Yeah. And then we're like, all right, there's going to be a lot of fake news coming up with the elections and Donald Trump, and that's where it sort of always came up to, you won't be able to trust anything on the internet. And then OpenAI got released. So that's when Elon Musk was part of it and came up with the idea, and, we got access to Open GPT-2. All right, we went and tested it. Cool, we can make a blog post. And that was the last we ever saw of OpenAI until the end of 2019, when it's like, all right, that's now the start of the LLM. Some people saying like a 4th industrial revolution that's going to change the way we do things. But it's not really until that point, maybe a year later, when we're like, there's this thing that's really important. I still hadn't gotten my head wrapped around it. Andrew was using it every day from, I think it was like end of November 2019.
I jumped right into
2022 or something. It was a while. Yeah, we had it, had access, didn't use it. Then you jumped into it straight away. And then I was getting into it every day. And then at one point, I'm like, all right, using it enough. It just, the gears clicked in my head, and like, it actually writes content for anything you do. And a lot of my job is writing content daily about user stories, requirements, rules. And I just started prototyping and evolving. And then that was really set the basis like, I think I can make a system that does this for us, or it helps us get to the point where I can review it and gives us content that we need to save a lot of time. And that was really the light bulb. Was one night sitting on the table playing with it, messaging Andrew. And it's like, all right, just go give it a go, man. Start building it.
And it was what, February, March last year it sort of started.
Somewhere like that.
You
I think I
prototyped
was
it
on
all
the couch.
in OpenAI, and
Yeah.
is step-by-step process, and you come up with a concept of what if we could give people a set of questions at that time. We used to send out surveys years ago, remember, to clients around them before they came into DevReady, and that was just a waste of everyone's time. The workshops got more information.
You get no answers or 1 or 2 word answers.
Yeah, so that created the 8 questions now that we have. Exciting news is we just launched the product, the first version, beta version of DevReady.Ai, which is the beginning. And he mentioned the brief about 10 minutes ago, the DevReady brief that we would get people to before we started anything. You can now go and get a DevReady brief just in the space of 10, 15 minutes. If you want to spend more time evolving and co-creating with the AI, it will get you there in maybe an hour. Just depends on how much effort you want to put into that. But that's a massive leg up that used to take us days to get to, and a number of workshops with customers just to get to that point, let alone what came after that.
Yeah, and fun fact about the brief, the reason we really started that was we were doing a project proposal with a client in Italy, and we weren't sure they were understanding what we were saying. So then I came with the idea, let's summarize this in a brief so he's clear on what we're talking about and make sure that there's no gaps there, even more than before we get into the DevReady. So that's really the first step. And then that survey came out of, all right, we've been sending these things out. We asked these questions. In our head, we couldn't systemize the questions because we'd get the same result. We just get people not answering them. And then I thought, all right, let's just get some hints, tell people how to answer them. And then that evolved into the next night on the couch saying, I'll just get AI to answer the question for you, and then you can evolve it. And then I was like, all right, now I can quickly test and iterate because I can get an answer. And at that point, it was like, all right, it takes a minute to answer a question. Today, it's taking 3-4 seconds. That's how fast it's evolved in that time as it is.
It's true. It's so fast now. But that's revolutionized our core business, Aerion, without putting a product on the marketplace and supporting the community. So our goal is with DevReady.AI, support non-techs, people that are really stuck on we've got an idea, we're looking to get clarity on that. We might want to build an app for our business that's all about scheduling and maintenance and sending people out on site. How might we structure that? What do we need to think about? And it'll give you a really good framework, which will cover key requirements, key unique selling points. You'll also get some core flows, some architectural things to consider. A number of those things, like I said, will take days to get to. So it's a massive leg up for that community that's really just early stage looking to plan a product. Where the fun is actually internally in our business today. And that's where you've taken our DevReady process and basically 10x the speed of it. Tell people about what you're doing with AI and what's it doing for our business.
So the product internally, I probably spent 3-4 hours in it a day working on actual DevReadies for clients. So the product starts with the survey, has the brief, completely ugly UI compared to the polished one we've released for everyone else. I just know how to deal with the clunkiness that I've developed for now. But what it does, we work through the modules. So once that we get the brief, we can then generate modules. So we can get a list of features, modules, or components that would help plan the system based on that information that's been generated. That only gets you so far. The rest of it is, that's a good starting jump point. So I may get 15, 20 modules. Then that's a good starting point to now start talking about those modules with the client. That then helps us refine, put more information in, generate the plan rules, and generate what potential rules may look like to deliver that module. And now that we've had those discussions around that initial starting point of 20, we may break those down into smaller components. So one may turn into 2 or 3. And then we'll add in all the missing modules that the AI hasn't captured because it hasn't been part of those conversations yet. And then we start planning a broader set. We may end up with 40, 50, 60 modules or features that this product has to deliver. From there, we can then go through and generate some draft user stories or functional requirements. So what are the actual things that we need to deliver in that module to make it perform the way we're documenting it to? User story is, as a user, when I do X, I expect Y. Oh, when I do X, I'm doing it because Y. So it's a way to frame a piece of functionality with a user. Functional requirement is different. It's something that has to happen. So instead of saying, as a blah, I need to do blah because blah, it's just do the thing. So an example, as a user, I need to be able to pick a subscription tier so I can use the system. The functional requirement is users can choose subscription tiers. Much simpler, just clear, verbose what has to happen. The way we then operate DevReady is we generate that list, review it, plan it, add in all the things that are missing, add our knowledge on top of what we need and how we would actually develop and implement that. We then create acceptance criteria. The acceptance criteria are the checklists that we use with our clients to tick off that a feature has been delivered as expected, that they sign off on before we start development. So at the end of a DevReady, you'll get a complete plan of a product plus an acceptance criteria checklist for every feature in the system. So you know that, all right, when you get it developed, this is what I'm signing it off against. That's talking about that goalpost that you mentioned before. You need to know the endpoint before you start, otherwise you just keep going in circles. From there, we then go into an engineering level with our developers. Once the project kicks off, all those user stories or functional requirements, we put a lot of detail into them so then the developers plan before they start working. Most developers should do that before they work anyway, but there's a lot that just dive in based on what a user story says. We've just systemized and processed the planning step to happen before you start development in a workflow. So we use AI again to help generate some content. So what we're doing at this point is what we call engineering. The relevant analogy would be you're writing the recipe for the cake now. So if you think about DevReady, the plan is, all right, I want to make a cake. Requirement is it needs to have vanilla icing. It should be a red velvet cake. User stories are blah, blah, however you want to say a cake should be baked at this temperature. That's an acceptance criteria. It should be soft and fluffy. Another one. The icing should be velvety. That's acceptance criteria. The recipe part is, as the developer, to make the icing velvety, these are the steps you need to follow. So you need to add in the icing, you need to add in whatever the ingredients are. An alternative if you don't have something, or replace egg or oil with X as a potential idea. And then you have that plan. Then the developers will go and implement that plan. They'll start writing the code. They'll internally test it against that acceptance criteria. Did it meet, is it velvety icing? If it is, they tick it off. Then it gets handed over to the PM or the client lead to check everything. Then we hand it over to the client. They'll taste that icing. And if it's velvety, they'll tick it off and say, yep, it's delivered as expected. So we plan all that way through. We're very documentation heavy, and the DevReady helps us get a quick draft of what we need to do based on previous work. And then we add our layer of knowledge and expertise on top to deliver an actual product. Or we tweak that content so it can deliver a product the way it's intending to be delivered.
And it's really co-creating with AI. It's not doing everything for you, but it's giving you a nice starting point to think about. It gives you things that you wouldn't even think about at a business rule level, down to the fine granular, like example, accepting credit card information. There should be a 16-digit valid credit card. Just stuff you may not document all the time, but then you've taken all the assumptions out of the actual project and you're actually getting to a point of higher chance of success. So the more assumptions you make in software, you're dwindling your chance of success significantly. The less assumptions we can make, the better. The biggest impetus was the cost to plan originally to compare to now. Like we said before, 10 times faster. We can do so much more because we're working with AI and co-creating with AI across every step of our business. It's giving us that sort of power to say, wow, we can make a big difference to projects because we know the chance of success goes way higher because we're actually doing all this work. But the cost for a customer to do this is also coming down. So there's a massive advantage there.
Yeah, we're almost getting to the point of providing a plan for the carpenter to know you're going to need 8,000 nails for the house, and this is exactly the spots you put all those nails. Like that's the level of detail we're getting to with engineering, where the developers will know exactly how should be implemented, what rules should be followed, and the acceptance criteria to tick it off.
It's an exciting time to be in tech because there's so much opportunity to actually help more people, to serve more people. And I think where I'm outside looking in, there's a lot of low-code, no-code tools going on in the world and all these things that are occurring. The advantage that businesses are going to have is they're going to be able to niche and customize software tools that would have cost millions of dollars years ago in the next 2, 3, 5 years, they're going to cost maybe $50,000, $100,000 to get to that same outcome. I think we're going to just compress the delivery of technology, and tools like DevReady.AI, we believe, will be a part of that change in the industry and support people in tech, non-techs, and everyone being on the same page. Clarity is king in the space, Ben. So if you're not clear on what you're doing, or the developers aren't clear, or the engineers or the project managers aren't clear, the key stakeholders are a bit disconnected from what they're getting, that's a chance of failure. So we want to de-risk a project. We're going a long way to doing that with DevReady.ai.
Yeah, and really the focus of DevReady has not been how do we deliver projects faster. It's how do we get more clarity on a project and make sure the right solution is being built. Because it doesn't matter how fast you can write the code. If the solution's wrong, you'll just get the shit product faster.
Correct.
And you'll be able to reiterate that over and over and over and keep building the wrong product. So it doesn't help. Having a low-code tool helps you prototype, but it doesn't help you plan your product.
I think you mentioned that right. And I think the challenge with low-code tools is you're going to have non-skilled people more sucked into this area. So, yeah, I can build you a tool for your business, but they don't really understand the tool. The technology is just a tool. It's about what is the process, how do we make that clean for users, how do we make that usable, and you're just going to get to, like you said, a shit product quicker. That's the reality. It's a faster hammer. That's what it is.
We can give our version of the tool that I use daily to any startup out there, and they can go through the whole process. But with the output they're going to get is not going to be at the detail or the quality that we would create with our knowledge and expertise in it.
Oh, it's AI serves skilled people, Like the reality is, if you don't know a topic and domain knowledge, you can get by with AI. But if you're going to deliver a great outcome, you still need some skill behind it to make the right decisions at the right point, to find the gaps that weren't raised, or to engineer it in a different way. So, it's still serving, in my mind, skilled people.
How many clients and startups have we spoken to on the podcast that have mentioned, I didn't have the time to learn how to code and do this myself? Yeah. And that's the frustration that they're getting. They think they need to get to that point. And that's where this can help, is it can get you to a starting point. But with us there, we can do it a lot quicker and a lot faster than we used to be able to do, and go much deeper.
Which is all about risk reduction, right? So in any project, there's a major risk. Startups, huge risk. If we can reduce that risk by 20, 30, 50, 60%, where everyone's in a good space, the more you can plan in a better way, test and validate quicker with customers, gets you along the proof that your product really has value and can serve a market. So that's the goal. If anyone wants to find out about DevReady.ai, you can check it out. There's a beta release right now. It will get you to a brief. Like I said, it will help you go from that early stage concept, answer 8 questions. It will work with AI. There's a new version coming out, which will do a slight update. Will enable you to basically modify what AI comes back with. We can edit it now, but you'll be able to modify, put your own notes in there and keep creating with it. And then get to a point to a brief, which will give you a 3-4 day starting point of working with us. So if you come to us with a brief, you basically just save 20, 30 hours of probably working with people like us to get you to the point of where you want to start. So it's a huge saver in that perspective.
Yeah, it really is.
So thanks again for joining us on the DevReady podcast. We wanted to share a little bit about us, and there's over 150 episodes now of you to go learn from other founders, people in the space, businesses that are building technology and everything in between. It's been a fun journey. We started it in 2008. It's been going up and down over those years.
So DevReady Podcast, it's named DevReady Podcast because we're just trying to be consistent on brand with DevReady. But the whole point of DevReady, as mentioned, is to help non-technical people get more clarity on their product. We were toying around with the idea of how do we create a podcast for our business so we can create content and help people. I didn't want to make a podcast talking to the developers because I don't want to do that.
Yeah, we don't want to serve developers. No.
Yeah. I didn't want to do one talking about coding. And we couldn't come up with a better idea. We had one first idea, which was digital transformation insights.
Is that what we had? I kind of remember that now. Yeah.
I still see it in my spot. I still see it in my Spotify podcast manager. That was trying to talk to corporates and understanding what process they're going through for the digital transformation. But then in 1 week, Andrew had 5 phone calls from different clients, startups that we hadn't worked with before. All that were, I think it was collectively $1.4 million was lost on rebuilding products over and over, and all of them had nothing to show for it. So the first person that we got on the podcast was Judy Selmans. We thought, all right, these are the stories we need to share. So by getting here on the podcast, we recorded an episode, and it was October 2019, the first one.
Yeah.
And then it was released, I think, in December or January. We're a bit slack.
Oh, we didn't know what we were doing at that time. It was how do you edit this thing? What do you do? I think I listened to it 85 times. Now I don't listen to any podcast. It just goes through the marketing team.
She had lost $400,000 on building the same platform three different times.
Not good.
And then they had finally gone on to a proper build or a proper team that decided to take the time to build the right thing for them and ask the right questions. And then it's evolved into talking to just startups and sharing those stories, so then other startups can try to get a step ahead, to getting experts involved and just getting some thoughts and opinions on what do you do in your job and how do you advise your clients. So we can share that information with other startups, and hopefully they can all just get ahead. The biggest thing I think we've learned probably along this whole journey is everyone I've spoken to, and I think you have too, is they all think they're the only person who've ever gone through that problem that they've gone through. And they're unique. They're that special snowflake that it's never happened to anyone else before. But it's the same problem.
Yeah, tech, it's a high-risk industry. Like, you're jumping into any business, it's 90% chance of failure if you go into any business, let alone business with technology behind it. So your chance of product failure is that 80-90% as well. So if you put those two together, your likelihood of succeeding as success in a technical startup is around that 95% chance of failure, 5% chance of success. Good luck. It's a tough industry. And if you're non-technical, it's even tougher and becomes harder. So it's about getting that right advice early. That's why we started the podcast. It was a bit eye-opening that I think that I asked myself, if I've got 5 people, it's a space of 2 weeks, coming to me in 2 weeks, they spend that much money, how many of them are there out there? We were a little company sitting in Melbourne. At the time, there was probably 10, 12 of us, give or take, in the business. And I said to Anthony, I go, sure, there must be hundreds, if not thousands of people like this. In Australia, globally, how many could there be? And we've interviewed mostly people from Australia. That's 150 people. Half of those are founders. A lot of them have been through those challenges. And it's just sharing why and sharing our journey as well helps people. What's worked, what hasn't, what works in our business. Well, not to say we're perfect, but we know that we can deliver good outcomes as a business. But that's off the back of 16 years of doing this. If you came to us 16 years ago, it would have been a hard slog to get a good outcome, as in on time, on budget, and the right solution. Now we know that we've got structures in place to get you there. So that's a little bit about the podcast and why it exists. Well, thank you for joining us on the 150th episode of the DevReady Podcast. It's been a pleasure and a joy. And I want to thank all our guests that have been on the podcast. Without you, there would be no podcast. So really, hats off to you for coming on, sharing your journey, sharing the tough times, the challenges, what's worked, what hasn't, those experts that have come on and given us some really good insights. And selfishly, I've used this as a learning hour in my week. And I've learnt so much for the people that have come on the podcast, and I know Anthony has too. So really, hats off to you all. And I want to thank you all for being on the podcast. And to those who will come on after the 150th episode, we welcome you on, and we'd love to share your stories and your journeys. So thank you, everyone. And then on the DevReady side, if you want to check out DevReady.Ai, just go to DevReady.Ai. Sign up. It's free right now. Download a brief, go through the process. Give us your feedback and thoughts. And if you're in a world where you think that the entirety of the project or the product could be good for you, there's also an alpha program that we're running with key people. So feel free to book in a time with me. Come have a chat and see if that's the right fit for you to jump in right now. So really thank you to everyone that's been on the podcast over the journey. Thanks to Anthony that's driven a number of these episodes and co-hosted, and now we segment a little bit, so we host singularly at the moment. But thank you everyone, and check us out at DevReady.Ai, as well as DevReady on all your Spotify, SoundClouds, etc. Thank you.
Thank you.